Welcome to this series of videos. Well, it all started in 2019. We've been thinking for a while to move down to the Midlands, thinking that we'd get a lot more use out of the boat. So we made the decision over Christmas, and in March we thought we'd better do something about it. So guess what, on March the 23rd we drove down to Mersey Marina, had a look at the mooring, that was on offer, which looked very nice, left a deposit and then drove back home. And then the plan was to cancel the agreement, which you have to give 2 months notice, and probably leave about April time. And then we got home and guess what, there was lockdown. Anyway, there was even though there was lockdown, I spoke to CRT, and we were allowed to move the boat. We had no mooring, we had to relocate. So we got all that cleared up. So I put my notice in at the end of March, which meant that we had to move by the 31st of May, which was fantastic, plenty of time. So we took the time to get a new cratch cover fitted and maiden fitted, which he did very well, and everything was going great. The mooring had been advertised, it had been let, and the new person was moving in on the 1st of June. So from the 1st of June we were homeless. The next stage of it was to plan when we were leaving. I looked at the tides and everything, and it looked like there was a decent tide on the 16th of June. So we were looking to leave probably around the 11th of June, which meant that I had to put the boat somewhere for those 11 days. Spoke to the moorings manager. There was no problem, just double up with Tony next to me and we'd leave it there for 11 days. He'd no problem with that. He offered other options. He was very, very good about it. So we just tied up against Tony and we left the boat there. Well, everything was going fine, and we got towards the end of May. I started to plan things, looked up stoppages, etc. And guess what? The Varzone Sliding Railway Bridge, which is operated by Network Rail, was out of action. They'd laid the guy off because of COVID, so that wasn't being opened. Some of the Trent locks, because of the flooding, had all silted up and hadn't been dredged, so there was restrictions on then. And Home Lock in Nottingham, which had started a repair before the COVID, that was being delayed, so they're only allowing passage through on certain days between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you had to book. So apart from that, everything was okay. So anyway, we decided to we went for the 11th of June. The route we were taking was take us down onto the River Calder, then onto the River Aire, down to Castleford, Ferrybridge, Nottingley, and we'd spend the first night at Pollington, which is what we normally do. So that takes us about 5 hours. From there we go along onto New Junction Canal and turn left at Bramwith Junction, stop there for the night, which then takes us down to Thorne. At Thorne again we stop for the night, and then on from there you go down to the Stainforth and Keadby Canal, which then takes you down to Keadby. And the plan, as I said earlier, was to go out on the 16th, a decent tide, mid-morning. From there we go up the River Trent on the flood tide, which gives you a bit of a push. You're flying through Gainsborough about 89 miles an hour. And then from there we overnight in Torksey. We stay on the pontoons on the river, which is just off, which actually takes you up to Lincoln if you go through the lock. From there we then go to a place called Cromwell Lock, and that's the head of the tideway. Stay at Cromwell Lock. From there we're actually through Newark, because we'd stayed at Cromwell and we stayed a couple of days extra there. We go through Newark. From Newark we then come up to Nottingham, and we usually stay at the Water Sports Centre at Pierpoint, which is Home Lock. Stay there overnight, and then you're through Nottingham, other side of Nottingham Canal, back onto the river at Beeston, up the River Trent then, and then you go up the River Trent and you go through then to a junction, which you can turn left, go to London, you can turn right up the Irish Canal, or you head straight up the river to a place called Sawley Cut, through Sawley Cut, river, and then after that the mouth of the Derwent and the River Trent. You then pick up the Trent and Mersey Canal. From there we usually head up to a place called Swarkston, above Swarkston Lock. Stayed there overnight, and then it's the last run in through on the Trent and Mersey Canal to Mercia Marina. This route we'd probably do in about 8 days, with all the stoppages and all the appointments we had to make. It took us 12 days. The route 140 miles, there's 30 locks, 17 swing or lift bridges, and it took us 12 days as I described before. By the way, by car it's 65 miles in an hour and a quarter. Yeah, we moved the boat on the 11th as we'd planned. We moved down to Woodnook Lock. Woodnook Lock we filled up with water, stayed there overnight. It rained quite heavily on the night of the 11th, which is a bit worrying because if the river comes up you can't get then down onto the river. But it wasn't too bad, it was on amber, so we decided to go out, and Terry kindly locked us through. From there we go down the River Calder and meet up with the River Aire at Castleford. We lock through Castleford and then down onto the River Aire, which then takes us down to Ferrybridge. Ferrybridge we then go through Nottingley. Nottingley we hang a right, which takes us down to Whitley Bridge, through Whitley Bridge, and then we stop at Pollington, which is where we're going to stop for the night. So fully decked out in waterproofs, we better get going, rain or not. Well, we're down at Pollington now. It wasn't too bad a trip, but by God it was cold. The river was running quite lively. We got down to Castleford, and it's where the River Aire and the Calder meet, and it pushes you down to the weir. So stuck the nose into the lock entrance, and Margaret climbed up the ladder, which she's not too keen on. Anyway, we got through the cut, back down onto the river, and when we got to Ferrybridge, again you've got to go past, turn round and drop off on the floating pontoons, which we did. But then coming back in, you've got to come back on yourself, and it's really sharp, so it was a bit tough getting in. I tried once, hit the side, then had to reverse out, go back up towards the road bridge now, and then come in. We got there. So pretty uneventful after that. Just ploughed on and got us down to Pollington. It's about 18 miles, and it takes us about, well, it took us 5.5 hours. But we're here now, inside, having a drink, and ready to go tomorrow. Well, we had a good night at Pollington. Even though it was June, it was still cold. So I'd actually lit the fire in the boatman's stove, so we had that running, which kept some heat on the back. And we left Pollington down through the lock, and then out through down onto New Junction Canal, and then we stopped at Bramwith Junction. we're turning right here onto New Junction Canal. On the left there's the sailing club, and just before there's the shooting club. If you carry straight on, you go down to Goole. Up the New Junction Canal, we're going to come back on ourselves up towards Thorne on the Stainforth and Keadby Canal. If you carry straight on, you go down from there you go down to Doncaster and ultimately through Rotherham into Sheffield, which is a dead end. Just as you turn onto the New Junction Canal, and you can see from the video, you then go across the Went Aqueduct. The aqueduct goes over the River Went, and from there we then go on to Syke House Lift Bridge, which you can see in the distance. The bridge is one of the many automated bridges that are electrically operated, either lift bridges or swing bridges. is this Syke House lock. It's a bit awkward if you've never done it before. They're all big locks down here because they take the big commercial traffic, but there's actually a swing bridge in the middle, so there's a sequence you have to go through whereby you put your key in, you have to open the swing bridge in the middle, go back, and it won't let you open the lock gates or the sluices until you've done that. First time around it's difficult, but once you know what you're doing it's alright. And Margaret's done it a few times, so we're okay. It's actually got guillotine gates on, because when the river actually gets into flood, it actually, you don't want it topping into the canal and flooding the canal as well. So you go through the guillotine gates, and then just down on there you do a sharp left back on yourself, and that's Bramwith Junction, and just before Bramwith Lock. Well, we're at Bramwith Junction now, which is where we're going to stop the night. It's taken us about 3.5 hours. There's 6 bridges, 1 lock, and it's about 8 miles. It's not a bad mooring, because you can get off and there's trees behind you. You can walk the dogs down there. So that's what we did, and we'll just stay here overnight and then move down to Thorne. We had a good night at Bramwith Junction. There's plenty of places to walk the dogs. There's some woods behind, and you can walk them along the side of the canal. So next morning we're up bright and early. We headed through Bramwith Lock, and then from Bramwith Lock we headed towards Thorne. We're heading into Stainforth now. There's a bridge just before there. There's a pub on the right, which is usually heaving with people, but not now. It's all locked down because of COVID. And then from there, we're not that far from Thorne. Here we've just gone to the M18 motorway. And this is coming into Thorne. I think it's a railway bridge we go under, and then on the left there's Stanleylands Marina. We're coming up to Thorne Lock now, and again that's a combination of a road bridge and a lock. It is mechanised, and there was actually a guy on duty, he was a volunteer. He decided to come in and give us a hand. And then just after that, on the left, about a couple hundred yards, there's the facilities block where you can actually stay overnight, and you're actually locked in. So we decided to stay there for the night rather than go through Thorne.
The footbridge has got a knack to it. Margaret, same with the footbridge.
Well, we're now at Thorne. It's not far from Bramwith Junction. It's about 4.5 miles, a couple of locks, a couple of swing bridges. It took us about 2 hours. So we're here, it's about lunchtime. We've pulled in at the services, and we'll just sit out the day. We've no rush. It's only half a day down to Keedby, and we're not going to go out till the 16th. So we'll just chill out, take the dogs for a walk in the park over the other side, and that's it.